We've been shopping at Whole Foods since way before I moved to Atlanta, probably over 2 decades actually. And now we've officially decided that it's our holiday headquarters this year. Whether we're hosting the big dinner or just showing up trying to look like we have our lives together, they've got literally everything we need. If we're hosting, we grab their heat and eat sides from prepared foods, zero stress, maximum delicious, and stock our pantry with their budget-friendly 365 staples, cream of mushroom soup, stuffing mix, French-style green beans, basically all the holiday essentials without the holiday panic. Yes, please. Plus, we're treating the family to some limited edition desserts, holiday rum cake, obviously. If I'm a guest, I will never show up empty-handed. Thanks, Mom, for teaching me that life lesson. So I snag one of Whole Foods' expertly curated cheeses and some maybe gluten-free crackers, some gorgeous flower arrangement, instant hero status. Oh, I just threw this together, no big deal. And for the main event, they've got their showstoppers, bone-in spiral ham, rib roasts, and even some amazing seafood like king crab. Lots of sales happening all month, and everything meets their strict ingredient standards. No antibiotics ever on any of those proteins. Gift giving? Done. Seasonal candles, clean body care sets, cookie gift boxes. I can literally check everyone off my list in one trip. And if I'm in a hurry, which to be honest, I usually am, I just order online for pickup or deliver in selected zip codes. Boom, no crowds, no chaos, just holiday magic. Shop for everything you need at Whole Foods Market, your holiday headquarters.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast and are not intended to malign any religion, group, club, organization, business, individual, anyone, or anything.
I'm Sarah Edmondson.
And I'm Anthony Nippy Ames, and this is A Little Bit Culty.
We woke up from a cult, and that journey was captured in The Vow on HBO and in my memoir, Scarred.
Now, in this podcast, we break down the shame and secrets that make these experiences so destructive with honest conversations on how seemingly benign groups can cross into the cultiverse and how to spot and recover from trouble if it happens to you.
Each week, we bring in experts, survivors, and whistleblowers to explore red flags, resilience, and even share a few laughs, because sometimes you gotta laugh.
Subscribe to our Patreon for early and ad-free listening, some live Q&A, and exclusive content at patreon.com/alittleBitCulty.
Welcome to Season 8 of A Little Bit Culty. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of A Little Bit Culty.
Welcome back, listeners. Today, we're joined by Anthia Gillick, actor, writer, and producer known for her powerful visual storytelling. Anthia's journey took a dramatic turn when, feeling lost after college and struggling to launch a business, she was drawn to the controversial organization OneTaste. Initially seeking to emulate the founder Nicole Dadone's business acumen, Anthia became deeply involved. Her commitment intensified after the devastating loss of her father, leading her to become a staff member and part owner of a franchise over the course of 2.5 years.
In this powerful conversation, Anthia shares the full arc of her time in the group, from the initial attraction and introduction to orgasmic meditation, aka OM, to the internal dynamics, the red flags she missed, and the destructive ideology like expanding your preferences that erased all personal boundaries. We know that one. We also explore the public shaming and control tactics called within the group upstrokes and downstrokes, and the emotional weight of her pivotal role as the witness in the recent trial.
Anthia's story is a raw and honest testament to confronting and healing from trauma, offering hard-won wisdom for anyone seeking true empowerment and to reclaim their voice.
For listeners interested in more background on OneTaste, how it operates, and the legal case against its leaders, we highly recommend our recent episode with journalist Ellen Huet, the first person to expose the group's coercive system of control. These episodes definitely go hand in hand, but for now, please welcome
Anthia Gillick.
Anthia, welcome to A Little Bit Culty.
Thank you. Great to be here.
How are you feeling? I know you're about to give birth to a human.
I am. Yeah.
How far along are you?
37 weeks right now. Yeah.
Wow.
I know you've been through a lot. How are you? And what does the audience need to know about you before you joined OneTaste? Where were you in your life?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. When I found OneTaste, I was in that kind of, I call it the like special post-college fall off a cliff moment. Had been through college and picked a random major. I majored in anthropology. And then it's sort of like you jump off a cliff and you're like trying to figure out real world life and jobs and what you actually want to do. And I was pretty lost. And I had grown up in Colorado and I have an interesting family, and it was definitely, I think it kind of set me up a little bit perfectly for OneTaste. It was just, I had a hard time individuating and like setting boundaries. I was still very attached to them. And I moved to San Francisco and was trying to set up an aerial silks business, which is, already pretty alternative. But I was just really struggling, and my parents were helping me. And I just wasn't really understanding who I was as a human at that point yet. And then I literally bumped into someone from OneTaste. I was actually out walking on the street in the South Market district. And this guy he was a student of theirs at the time. He was sitting in front of their like warehouse housing situation and clipping his toenails. Ew. And I like almost tripped over him. And he came like running after me and asked me to coffee. And I don't know, I think I was just kind of like you move to San Francisco to like be open to crazy experiences, right? And so I was like, whatever, like, sure. My dating life was terrible. Like my friend life hadn't really like found any traction. And I was just like, why not? So I gave my number and he introduced me to the whole shebang.
What was his pitch?
Well, I mean, he was just picking me up for a date when he asked me to coffee. And actually at the first coffee, I think he must have probably been scared to really say much, but he kept saying he was like living in a commune, but he didn't give me any details about like the practice or even tell me the name. The practice, of course, being orgasmic meditation, which would have stopped me in my tracks, right? Yeah, it wasn't until we kept running into each other because the studio that I was trying to set up, the Aerial Silk studio, was literally like barely a full block down the street from that warehouse. And so we kept running into each other at like the coffee shops and laundromats and stuff like that. And then he asked me to like a second coffee and actually told me the name of the practice. And then I was like, hold up. He said, what? Because, they also used to call it pussy stroking, which was the other catchphrase that stops you in your tracks. So
a lot of people I've talked to that have done OneTaste say that, and yet they do it. So how does it or how do you get comfortable with that? And I understand some people are more comfortable with their sexuality or having somebody stroke them to the point of orgasm in public than others, but like, how do you go from A to B?
It definitely took me a little while. Definitely once he said that, I grilled him for 45 minutes with a million questions. It's funny, that still kind of happens to me. If I'm telling this story, I feel like it's like a instant dinner party halt. And like all attention comes to me for 20 questions. But so like I grilled him with a bunch of questions and he had like legit answers for all of it. It was how you like find yourself and find your power, and like orgasm wasn't just orgasm. It was spirituality, your soul, chi, God, like all the things lined up and made sense. And the thing that he was offering at that point, because he had tried to invite me to an event called Turn On, which I was like, no, thank you. I'm busy every Wednesday that you offer this thing. But the second offer that he had was just a lecture, and it was $10. And I was just going to go listen to Nicole Daedone, the founder, and no pants were coming off. Like it felt very safe. I could like find out about this crazy thing and walk away if I wanted to. And I did. They really tried to corral people into signing up on your way out the door. But I left that lecture. I managed to walk out. But then I just couldn't get it out of my head for like 3 days. It was, Nicole was, I don't know if you've watched her TED Talk. She's incredibly charismatic. She's super funny. She would say things about herself that I'd never heard anyone say. Like she just owned her flaws and like understood her psyche in a way that I'd never met anyone who was like that accepting of themselves. And that was really like more than the practice. That was really what I was like.
That's what sold you? Yeah,
because like I said, I was trying to be that, with getting this like alternate business off the ground. So yeah, ended up signing up for it was a coaching circle that was just going to be 15 people asking questions just to her for, like a few days later. And that felt like, again, it felt safe to me. I was like, I don't have to do the practice. I can just ask her how she's that amazing businesswoman and get out of here.
So it was more business for you.
Yeah, it really was. Like I said, my dating life could have been better. My friend life could have been better, but like that wasn't why I was there. It was why plenty of people came in. But for me, it was really wanting to learn to be Nicole.
Did you?
I mean, I'm sure I picked up some tips and tricks, Well, I think by the end, I didn't want to be her. Right? But yeah, it was, so after that coaching circle, they offered me into what was known as an exploratory, which was like an hour-long free coaching session, deep dive, like learn all your buttons to push for sales, right? And after that was when I signed up, and I still only signed up for like the big life coaching program. But the Rachel Cherwitz, the other woman who got convicted under Nicole, was the person who I was talking to, and she threw in the Intro to OM course for me. And that was when I finally got like signed up for that. And then still halfway through the day, I was like, I don't even know if I can do this,
And is that an option? Can you observe and not get stroked? Is that the right term?
Yes, that's the correct term. You're right. It wasn't at the time when I took mine. Later on, we did set it up that like you could technically like you take the class would close, it would end, and then there was a lab afterwards that was optional, but it really wasn't. It was really like if someone tried to walk out, people would, there would be someone there to talk to them to be like, but why? Don't you just want to give it a go now? This is when you'll have the least barriers, and you could just do it once. And if you hate it, then you can be done. So there was a lot of like talking people into things.
Did you feel targeted?
I mean, I don't know that they had like a particular target. I mean, it was, I kind of sometimes think of it like a club. It was like hot women and then like get the guys to follow kind of thing. And so like, so there were a lot of like techie guys and older guys, just like anyone who would kind of come in and follow and pay for things. But it was a pretty broad spectrum of people. So it didn't feel like I was necessarily targeted for much more than like my looks as a woman. As things got deeper and as I learned more about what they did with sales, there was a lot more like forethought as people went deeper. But like the net was pretty broad to have, just like any funnel, right? To have as many people come into that intro as possible.
I'm at the risk of like getting, personal or sensational. I know our audience is going to want to know, like, what's it like to be so vulnerable and like have your pants off? Are people watching? Like, can you walk us through the OM?
Totally. Yeah. So the way they would describe it is basically a 15-minute partnered pussy stroking practice, and it was supposed to benefit both partners. But it was mostly done, not exclusively, but almost exclusively done on women and their genitalia. So like we called them group OMs. So that could be anything from just like 4 practitioners, so like 2 women, to, at one point there was, one of the courses was called the Orgasmic Meditation Experience, and they were like trying to set a record. I was like, I don't know who you're beating on this record. And there was definitely no like official Guinness Book person there, but they counted that it was like 1,200 people oming at one point in the same room. And so everyone would be lined up on these things that were called nests. And like, so you were kind of like next to the next woman, not like, you're laying down, you're not seeing anything. Mm-hmm. The only people that were seeing things were like coaches walking between the like aisles of these nests laid out. But yeah, it was like absolutely the first time like you're standing in this room and like all the women take their pants off. And you're like, this is insane. And you like kind of quickly get to the nest and like try to cover yourself up. And yeah, it was super vulnerable. It was crazy. It just, the thing that made sense to me after I did it once was like the meditative aspect to it. It really did feel like a meditation in a weird way, because the whole thing, you were told to focus on sensation. And so it was like to take all your attention off all the things that always run through your mind and bring it into just like exactly what you're feeling in your body as like detailed as possible. That is the principle of meditation, right? If you focus on a flame, if you focus on your breath, you like your brain quiets.
Yeah.
How did they partner you up? Like, what was that process like?
So there's a lot of things that like were taught, and then there was the practicality of how it turned out as you like became deeper staff. The thing that we were taught and that happened as a student was you just asked whoever, and you could always, they had like a script for it. It was, would you like to OM? And the other person would say yes or no. And either answer was fine. And that was like the end of the conversation. But then as we became staff, there were assignments for sales purposes and that type of stuff.
Yeah, that's where, I mean, sidebar, there was a lot of mouth kissing in Nexium. I don't know if you noticed that in the vow. And there was I didn't mind it with people I found, to be attractive, but there were people that I was not attracted to who'd go in for a kiss and I'd be like, sorry, here's a cheek. So I can only imagine this situation being like, ew.
I mean, one of the concepts that was maybe kind of the most like corrosive in a certain way was they talked about expanding your preferences. And so it was like basically the way that Nicole would describe it in her teachings was like, if you cut things out of your life, like, and this went for like, negative emotions, like we talk about like fear or anger or whatever, right? But the lower lows you would let yourself feel, the higher highs you could feel. And the same went for like people. So it was like, if you didn't have a makeout or an ohm or whatever it was, they called anything sexual makeouts. If you didn't have that with someone that you weren't attracted to, you were possibly missing out on like an area of your orgasm and therefore spiritual freedom that you could have had access to. And so it was like, that was one of the things that just like boundaries just went out the window because you would like push yourself, right?
We saw the documentary. If I was a guy who couldn't get laid and I saw this, I would go there and just play along, right? And then when you have someone who's advocating to break down boundaries, that's your opportunity.
Absolutely.
Thanks for bringing that up a bit. That reminded me, before we get into that, did you see the doc and was it accurate for you? Like, did you feel like it was portrayed well?
Yeah. No, I think they did a great job. I don't know if you caught, there was some big controversy once the case went through that one of the people who was interviewed, like, fabricated her journal. It was the whole thing, but that was standing. I think that they did a really great job of gathering a big picture. The thing that I would describe it as, though, is like the doc covered like the top third, and then they very understandably like ran out of footage, for like everything else that was happening. And I feel like they tried to do some shoddy recrees on some of the stuff that they didn't have footage for. And then after that, it was all just like behind closed doors stuff that, people talked about a little bit, but you just can't possibly cover.
Some rogue oming.
Well, yeah, I mean, rogue oming was probably just the tip of it. It was more just like all the interpersonal dynamics of like the staff and just like how that got in your mind and like the constant kind of like, they called it like turn on training, but it was like public shaming and just like, there was also like the concept of like upstrokes versus downstrokes. And it was really remarkable what they could get away with telling you that was just like would break you, but fell under a downstroke.
What's an upstroke and a downstroke?
I mean, if you think of literally like stroking up on a clit and then stroking down on a clit, it was the like verbal equivalent of that. So it was basically like the upstrokes were like meant to like it's like a compliment that's going to make you feel good about yourself. And then the downstrokes were supposed to be like hard truths that would like ground you and you supposedly needed them, but it ended up being shame. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a nauseatingly familiar scene where in the doc where Nicole was giving feedback to some guy and saying terrible things to him, and he's only allowed to say thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah. I literally just like burped a little bit in my mouth. Because
that's what we call TMI.
It still hurts, yeah.
Well, it was feedback. What the rule in Nexium was you had to be like, that was the deal. Open to feedback at all times, and all feedback's valid.
And even if you didn't understand it, you had to go look at it, right?
Yeah, and even if you strongly disagreed with it, then that was also a reason to look at it.
Maybe more of a reason.
Yes. Tell us, I know you were there for just a few years. How did you go from going for business to sampling the omings? Like, what was your arc, and what were some of the red flags along the way?
Yeah. So, I mean, first off, it's so funny. I was only there for 2.5 years. It felt like a decade.
I bet.
I'm sure you had that experience with Nexium. It's just like when things are that intense.
It was a decade.
It was actually a decade, but yeah.
It draws time out in that
distorted
really intense way. Yeah. But so I did about a year of being a student/volunteer kind of person. And then actually I was like kind of thinking I was done, and my dad passed in a helicopter accident. He was a helicopter pilot and crashed.
Shit.
Yeah. It just knocked my life off course. And I don't know if you guys have lost parents, but it just like my North Star went out the window. And I was just like, I was only 26 when he passed. And I was just like, someone tell me how to function, you know? And so I really think I probably wouldn't have gone in as deep as I did, except that like I just needed someone to take the reins to my life and tell me what to think. So they ended up offering me ownership of, they were splitting the company into franchises at the time, franchise branches. And they ended up offering me part ownership of one of the franchises. And so then I just went for like a whole nother year and a half around. And that was really when like I got way, way more behind the scenes and deeper on all the fun things.
Let's take a break from the cultiverse, shall we? Here's a word from our sponsors.
You hear that? That's not just a Toyota truck. That's the sound of no crowds, no alerts, no distractions, and no telling what you'll find next. You know, like a detour. So why would you ever take a tour when you could take a detour? Toyota trucks.
Join me and follow the podcast Conspiracy Theories, where we explore what's really going on behind the official narrative. Like, what if the Loch Ness Monster isn't a monster at all, but an elephant? What do the richest 1% know that we don't? And why are they building all those bunkers? And really, what the heck is going on with the Denver airport? Join me every week to see just how high up this goes on the Spotify podcast, Conspiracy Theories. Listen on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
Escape's over. Let's return to our regularly scheduled cult talk.
Okay, so you've been out now for how many years?
For about a decade. Yeah.
Okay, for about a decade. So you've had lots of time to reflect. Tell us about some of the, like, what was your first sort of like signpost or red flag that you saw that you didn't recognize for what it was till later?
You know, that's one of the super hard things about these kind of things is like in my head at the time, I was like, I never felt super blind. You know, I was like, the practice is crazy to start with. You're like, this is wild. I'm doing a really fringe thing. But it felt like an adventure. And I was like, okay, they have some like questionable practices. Like, I don't know that the word cult ever entered my mind, but I was like, I see what they're doing and I'm not going to be susceptible to it because of that. And it's sort of just hubris, you know? And I mean, there was a million things I missed. And like, as I got deeper into staff, things got more revealed. But I guess probably one of the biggest things was like, just like the utter lack of privacy. I mean, we had easily 100 texts an hour going back and forth as like staff and volunteers. And the amount of work that was being asked of people, even like, especially not for pay. And then even as they, became contractors independent contractors or owners, the pay was still just tiny. And it was like we were supposed to work 100, 120 hours a week. There was just like, you didn't exist outside of OneTaste. And I was dating someone on staff and getting a pretty intimate portrait of this right away. But you just like dismiss it. You're like, oh, well, it's for your spiritual betterment. And like, why wouldn't you want to dedicate yourself to this incredible cause that's going to change the world? And again, like I said, those preferences, things where it just slowly... Your boundaries, and it's miles behind you before you know it.
Yeah.
Is it safe to say that the spiritual buy-in was, I guess, the promise exchange of why you would stay? Like, there's this promise of spiritual growth. Like, if I stay, this is what I'm staying for.
I think that was a big part of it. Also for me in particular, like I was a fan of like Harry Potter and magic and that kind of stuff, and just like I felt special. And I think that's a lot of what happens with cults, right? And like, who doesn't want to feel special? Like you have some kind of inside hack on life, And so like, they really build it as like biohacking, and it was like, we were unlocking stuff that was blocking the whole world. And so like, it was definitely the mission too. Like, I felt like I was bringing this thing to the world that like was going to make the world better.
Did you feel that way in your personal life? Did you feel like you were breaking through things when was there actual tangible evidence that like, oh, this is making headway in this area.
Yeah, especially with like when I was a student in the coaching program, because there was a lot of focus on like, like we would do like psychodrama things where like all the voices in your head got acted out and like chatted with each other, and like there was a coach guiding you to a breakthrough, right? And so afterwards you were like, oh, I didn't know that about myself. And wow, if I can just implement that in my business or my family or my friends, like I'll be, more empowered or clearer, and it's just like asking for what you wanted. That was one of the things that no one had ever really asked me what I wanted in life. And then like getting good at practice on that. And like, I still think there are things that probably did benefit me and, still for better or for worse. I mean, there's a lot of things that are for worse, but like kind of the parent voice, like Nicole and Rachel still live in my head.
Yeah. A little unsolicited advice. If you can figure out what advice they're giving you that they took from other places, so it's not them.
Absolutely. That's one of my big red flags on cults is if you can't attribute a thing to learning where it came from, then you're like, oh, okay, that's just the human truth.
Yeah. They don't have to say, thank you, Vanguard, after I communicate properly or something.
Right. Finding the source and replacing it is helpful to the detox process, right?
Yes. Did you ever live there?
So was it the warehouse?
No. So the warehouse, what was referred to the warehouse, especially in the dock and that type of stuff, was before my time. I lived at a place called 1080 Folsom, and then a number of what were known as OM houses and staff houses. Pretty soon, I think it was probably just a couple weeks after I got officially OM trained in my intro class, my live work loft where I was trying to get that aerial business going flooded. So I was just, was trying to figure out where I was going to live next. And a couple of people who were living in 1080, including the first guy that I had met, convinced me to move into 1080. And it was again, it was just it was a crazy experience. It was like a dorm life experience on crack as adults, with sex thrown in. I was like, this is insane. I will laugh about this in my 50s. Why not?
So what was life like there? So people are oming on the side, or then they're hooking up.
It's a big ohm.
What was it? What was it to give us a day in the life of a inner circle? Or were all these people inner circle like you were at this point? Were you our staff, I should say?
No, 1080 was the last of the houses where you could sort of opt in or opt out on different levels in a certain way. So there were people there who everyone ohmed. You had to ohm to be a part of the community. But there were plenty of people who were there just as ohmers who happened to live there. And then after 1080, they split it off into serious staff houses, training to be staff houses. And then other community members could just organize however they wanted, kind of thing. But yeah, 1080 it was very communal. It was there was a lower level. It was 2 levels, 2 floors of the building, and then a downstairs communal kitchen kind of thing. And actually the office that they ran all of OneTaste out of was in that building as well. It was just a little side office. The mid-level was kind of for younger students, and they would have these immersion programs that could come in for a week kind of thing. And then the upper level was all the serious staff, and it was a clothing optional floor. Pretty funny. Very San Francisco wild.
Was there attrition? Did people finally say, screw this, I'm out? Or what was that like? And what happened when people did that?
I think there must have been a little bit before I got there. There was kind of a tide turning point about halfway through when Nicole had a co-founder, and he left, and there was a number of other very senior staff people that left. And that was when it occurred to me that you could leave as I left, and there became more of a landslide kind of thing. And then there were a shocking number of people from my era who were still involved, and they were, all her supporters that you can see in the background of her photos at the trial.
Wow. So they're former friends of yours.
Yeah, totally. I knew almost everyone there.
Hostile towards you?
It was a really surreal experience because one of the things that we had to do as staff was always be turned on. And so they weren't, but because I know the philosophy is right, I was sitting there being oh, they're not because they think they're above me. They've already processed this. They definitely don't think Nicole and Rachel are going to get convicted. this whole thing's kind of a joke and they're just here to intimidate me, frankly.
How did you get out though? Like what were the I know it's never just one thing, but tell us some of the things that started to add up that caused you to leave.
Yeah. I mean, there was a number of things that just sort of like crossed weird boundaries for me. Like I remember there was like a class where they always kept pushing you, even if you were like working back of house or weren't sure if you wanted to do sales and like, really recruit for them. They were always pushing you towards recruitment, right? Because that's how these things keep going. So it was like one of my first like really big sales that I'd done. And I was like very uncomfortable that I'd made this sale. And then they actually ended up asking me to do a prostate massage on him and like take him over. It wasn't just like a little massage. It was like all the way to finish. And I was just like there had been ethics committees before. Just like, I was just like, wait, like all the lines are getting blurred. And it just really started freaking me out. And then there was a huge blowout in the team of the franchise that I owned. And we went through, they had this, like, they brought in this guy who was like an expert in forgiveness to have this like reconciliation council that was supposed to be a safe place. And we got on these meetings and they were just horrible. I was on for probably like almost every day for a month. Like part of it was good in that people were finally saying things, but like it was just torture. And that one of the people on the team actually left. And I sort of had the realization that like I was the next in line for the treatment that she'd been getting, which was not great. She was definitely falling apart.
You saw your future.
I saw my future. Yeah. And I was just like, this is going to get really ugly. And so I started trying to like kind of find a way to like get myself out. There was sort of this tough, like, again, I mentioned those upstrokes, downstrokes. Nicole basically said that if you didn't leave on like a happy note, that you would be stuck there forever. And so I was like trying desperately to find a place to like get back to some kind of happy before I could leave. And then I ended up having a fight with there were like these strokes that would come through is what they would call them. But like, it was like the current fad. And one of the strokes that had come through was like marriage, but you weren't like getting married to like the love of your life. You were getting married to like the person that you were with currently, or at least like assigned. It was very arbitrary. And I felt like I was like marrying the practice, not the person. And so I got into this fight with my fiance and it turned like severely violent. And I'd never had anything go violent in any kind of relationship in my life before. And I was just like, he ended up like, I bit him and he choked me and like my life basically flashed before my eyes. And I was like, I have to go. Like this is getting very dangerous. And so I left a few weeks after that.
And was this around the time, I know in the documentary, they talked about like letting out the beast?
Yeah, that was always a practice. Yeah, there was a lot of things. I can't remember if they talked about them in the documentary, but like stuff that we like don't glorify. Right. And like you were saying, like if you're a guy who can't get laid, like there's usually a reason, right? You're like a creep or, like no social skills or those kind of things, And so like those things were glorified and had a place, and a beast and like violence was one of them. So yeah, all sorts of angles to normalize almost anything.
Yeah, so it feels like that would be eventually what's going to happen, because I imagine predators would get wind of, hey, there's this OneTaste where they're normalizing bad behavior.
Yeah, I would imagine. I don't know if anyone ever came in with that thought in particular, but they very well might have.
Well, they hide it. They know it's not socially acceptable, and that's how these people work.
It seemed like there was more just kind of nerdy dudes who wanted to learn how to like connect and be sexual, or at least for the men.
Yeah, I would say that was definitely the majority. Yeah, and just like confidence, I guess, is maybe the best way to put it.
There were a lot of that in Nexium, except for my husband, obviously. You meet like just these nerdy dudes who were like, oh, there's a lot of hot women here. I'm going to stick around.
I mean, maybe in Vancouver that went on.
Oh, there's...
Because there's a lot of actresses there. And if you were a nerdy guy and you walked into one of those things, you don't have access to them otherwise.
Yeah. And especially because we had a similar thing of like, the sex part wasn't, at least not in my center, but back in Albany, yes. But yeah, like if I had a reaction towards somebody aesthetically, it was up to me to get a projection sourcing to figure out like why wasn't I more open to
absolutely
like, yeah, it's my limitation. I'm just being materialistic or superficial, that I'm not being open-hearted to this person who's kind of yucky for whatever reason.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that stuff was all on you for sure.
Yeah, similar tactic there. This episode would not be possible without the support of our sponsors. Let's hear what they have to offer. Did you skip over all the ads? We hope you didn't. Thank you to our sponsors, and thank you for listening. Now, let's resume our culty convo. How much interactions did you have with Nicole?
So she was always pretty like aloof, which was like catnip for me. you know, it was like a celebrity. At one point, like right after my dad died, I did get her phone number, which was like, oh my God, it's like if you think of like your top celebrity that you would like love to, be friends with or whatever, like, yeah. And so, I could text her like for important things that like I just couldn't work out. No one else could coach me on kind of thing. And then there was one time I got like the honor of picking up her dry cleaning and getting her groceries and going to her apartment to like scrub the scum off her bathtub and like dust her like, what do you call them? Baseboards, and it was like, oh my God, so it was very much like a surreal reverence, which is another one of my cult red flags, like if there are people around someone or worshiping them that hard, that's another run.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. That's in our upcoming book.
In hindsight, did you find her well adjusted?
No.
What was her personal life like?
The longer I've looked at it, the less I know. There's a funny, like when you look at the OneTaste trailer, the Netflix trailer, she runs through like 10 different thought leaders, right? And like 10 quotes them all and throws all these things out. And I felt like I had the same experience with her backstory. Like it was kind of always changing. And like even what I used to hear her teach is not what's in a lot of the articles that I read around the trial too. Like it just kind of always shifted. Some of the articles mentioned that she had a, convicted pedophile of a father. Like it's, I think probably whatever happened, it was a pretty troubled past. And, that is another thing that'll change your mind. Like I definitely understood that her brain didn't function the way that a lot of people's did.
Right.
People always ask, like, did she start out with good intentions and the power went to her head, or she started out like Machiavellian? Like, you don't know, obviously.
That's one of those questions you could ask forever, right? And try to get someone to diagnose something or other. And it's just...
Well, they understand what it's like to be, if you have a conscience, and they can see how, if they don't have a conscience, how they can manipulate you, and they understand that you can't project that kind of malevolence into them because you don't have it. They can walk around in plain sight, look normal, requisite variety over a lot of options and a lot of ways they can abuse you, and you never suspect it.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right?
Yeah.
So you have this violent interaction. You decide to leave. How do you heal?
I mean, any way I possibly could. Just gobs and gobs of therapy of absolutely every kind. I had a very interesting, my now husband, we knew each other actually beforehand and dated a little bit right after my dad passed, and then got back together after I left. And he was just incredible with my recovery process. I had this whole lingo, this whole lexicon of English, but not. And so my husband would be like, what are you saying? Like, I have no idea what that sentence is. I just felt incredibly alone in that. Like it was one of the isolation kind of tools, right? It's like you just can't speak to someone outside of OneTaste. So he forced me to write I think it was like 180 word dictionary of just like translating what I was saying. Because when we dug down into it, he'd be like, oh, so, like consciousness or something like that. And I was like, oh, yes, I guess there is a word for that. Right. But so he kind of pushed me to translate what I was saying. And so that was a huge help. And then just like gobs of journaling. And
give us an example of a word that is unique. We call it loaded language, right? What's a word that's unique to?
Yeah, I think probably one of the most used ones was tumescence. So like the literal definition of it, right, is unused sexual potential, right? Like it's like desire builds up and like it hasn't got anywhere to go.
Like I have an excess of tumescence.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
But it was used in so many different ways, basically to like describe being nervous, or like they would say that you could be like purpose tumesced, or like, I don't know, like relationship tumesced or something like that. Like basically it was like anything that you had like a desire for that like you weren't achieving. And so like, and then it became like a battering ram kind of thing, right? Where like, if you were in a class and you were like, I remember there was one class that I was getting trained to be like head of back of house on. And they would talk about this thing with your brain that like, it is a science principle, like you said, like, where did this all come from? Right. But so like mammalian brains have like limbic mimicking. And so they would tell me that like, because I was running back of house, my nervousness around doing that, my tumescence around doing that was causing the whole sales process to tank. And like I had to handle my tumescence or there wasn't going to be any sales in class. And so like the only way to do that was to go have a makeout with someone during lunch. And like I had to pick between 3 staff members. And like that was who I was going to go make out with.
And by make out, you mean have sex with?
Well, the reason they called it make out is like you could decide what you wanted to do in the room, but in practicality, it was sex.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it was like, that's like a word where like we would be like, you're too messed, and then like when you get out, it's like, what does that mean? Like, because there's 40 different contexts for it.
So it's basically used to gaslight and control.
Yeah.
When you were out, were you still kind of close to the environment?
So I felt, again, like this was my like way of justifying the whole thing. I felt like I was going to be the first one to do that because everyone else they had talked about, they like, you would get kind of excommunicated and you would be told that like, you couldn't talk to that person who left and that they were dead and they weren't supposed to, again, this is used in Scientology and all the things, right? But like, you weren't supposed to communicate with them. And I really tried to like, see if I could change that. I don't know. I sometimes wonder if it maybe slowed some of my recovery process, but I really tried to keep contact for a long time with people.
And were they receptive?
The senior staff people were and weren't. I think I ended up having like probably 2 or 3 like coffees with a couple of them over the years. But some of the community members were more so. There's a few friends that I still maintain that like were actually people that I got along with.
When did you get hooked into the trial? Did the FBI call you? How did that roll out?
Yeah, that was a very intimidating call to get. I think the FBI was pretty swamped during a lot of it, but so it was over about 5 years. And they first contacted me and I was super scared that they were like, I didn't know what side they had me on kind of thing because I'd been an owner. So yeah, it was a crazy call to get when you pick up the phone and it's like, hi, this is so-and-so from the FBI. And you're like, ha, what?
Had you put language to what had happened yet? Like specifically what the abuses were? And did the FBI understand that?
Yeah, they run you through an incredible prep process that's about a year long, actually.
How many people testified and what was your piece of the puzzle? Like what were you showing?
I don't know the exact count. I think it was around like 15 or something like that. And it's so hard to say. It's such a wild...
Were you in the room the whole time?
No, you're not allowed to be. You're absolutely not allowed to have any contact with it until you've testified. And then they ask you actually not to come back, which I totally understand. It's like there's enough dating people in there.
What was it like to be in the room with her, with Nicole?
Brutal. Yeah, no, I mean, I hadn't seen them in probably 7 or 8 years at that point. And I loved them. I'm sure, get that experience. Like, I just like these people were so important to me. And so it was a really hard, weird goodbye and like a strange form of closure. And just like, there were so many things that like it was blasphemous to say when I was in. And then I'm sitting there saying them.
What kind of things were you saying that you never would have said before?
Just anything negative. And it may be not even negative, but like contradictory to their teachings. It was just like, there was a party line and you towed it. And so just to like say anything against that was just like, I couldn't have done it when I was in. I don't even think I could have done it as fast as, the NXIVM case was incredible. That really I think that case set the precedent for OneTaste even being able to be convicted,
Mm-hmm.
There's more language out there for...
Yeah.
When the symptoms come out in the media, people connect the dots way quicker now, I think.
I think so too.
I'm not saying our case was one of many that I think has been able.
But it was maybe the most it did a lot.
Yeah, and I've found it's been really helpful for victims to go, oh, wait, I'm not fucking crazy. This shit goes on, and this is what it looks like and sounds like, and someone put language to it in kind of real time for me.
Yeah, it kind of breaks up a lot of the gaslighting, right?
Yeah.
Tell us one thing that you were able to speak of that would have been blasphemous. If you can, I mean, I guess these are public records. You're allowed to talk about it.
We were oming at least 4 times a day, but like there was also a thing called fear inventory. They had a lot of things from 12-step that were kind of like borrowed and corrupted, like the amends process. They would only be like a chunk of it. But a lot of these things, like including like I was raped at 21, and that was like an experience that I recounted aloud in front of staff multiple times, and so like, and then like there was also like sales, we used Salesforce as like our logging kind of information. And then there was a lot of like documents made that had just like intense amounts of personal information about people. And it was just like, it was kind of all gathered and used for sales. And like, I mean, part of it was like, I justified that was like fine and normal. And we were just helping these people. Right. But then part of it was also just like being able to like say that like, yeah, my inner workings and keys to all my buttons in my psyche were in some cases written, in some cases verbally said, like, but just like available to staff to use against me, and like not only to put that together, but to like say that out loud and say that like, that's not okay.
Your vulnerability and your transparency is being used to punish, leverage, or get you to behave a certain way.
One thing that stuck out for me from the doc was, I think it was somebody who's on the sales team saying that they were trained very much to expose what a person's worst thing was or fear. And then you kind of bring that up, like, what if you never blah, blah, blah. And then saying, well, here's the salve. So you create the problem and then expose the wound and then provide the salve.
Yeah, exactly.
Overall, would you say it was healing, cathartic, terrifying?
Absolutely both. Yeah, no, I mean, it took me a number of weeks to recover. I've luckily got, the tools from my 10 years of doing so. I was definitely pretty down for a couple of weeks of just like, just hurts to remember all that. And the, the cross exam was just horrible. It was.
I'm sure.
It was insane. I thought they were going to like try to shift my discredit me and like make me look like I'd been lying. And they instead just went after my character for like 6 straight hours. I was like, cool. So all the things that like I'm self-conscious about in my life, I mean, they tried to paint this whole picture of me of just being this like bougie asshole that like basically thought I could come in and not work a day in my life. And I was like, except I was working 120 hours a week, but yeah.
I had to get that remotely, but I did feel it because I didn't get to testify in the end, which because of what you just said, I'm grateful for, because I don't think I could have handled that type of character assassination.
While pregnant.
Well, no, I was nursing a newborn.
Oh, that's right.
I was pregnant. So, it's like 4 or 5 months there.
No, I would have been a terrible witness. They would have been, isn't it true that you wrote a memoir?
That's one of the craziest parts about it is you don't get to defend yourself. You literally just have to be like, yes, no, I wouldn't put it that way. Okay.
Yeah. It's hard. What was it like when, and we had heard somewhere, I can't remember where I read this, that like at her sentencing, Nicole and Rachel thought that they were going to they planned a party in New York after the sentencing, but they like took her away in handcuffs. Did you know that?
I didn't know about the partying. That's
yeah, they were so not in reality about what was going to happen. They're like, I'm going to go for my sentencing and then we're going to have a party, but then they like went to jail.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about that?
I think it's for the better, but like I said, I could tell, especially from the articles, like I could very much tell that there was not, and that, that kind of magical thinking was everything. It like, that's what I mean by like, we felt special, is it was like the thing that they always talked about was you could basically like ohm your way out of anything. You would just like, you just turn your furnace on and you just burn through any problems in the world. And like your sexual energy would just, heal it all and line it all up. And it was all going to be right. And, and even if it wasn't, it was for your betterment, right? It's just whatever it always says, right? So
always such a way to spin it.
Yeah. So it's it's an interesting reality check after all that.
At the end of this, what would you say is your wisdom? What could you share with people going forward?
Like we said about the red flags, I think I love that you're putting all that in your book. And just like, I think the biggest thing is, especially, I grew up pretty privileged. I'm, not one of those nerdy guys you were talking about. Like people often kind of meet me and are like, you got in a cult, and I feel like you probably get this too, Sarah, but it's just like, this is not an isolated incident. It is not a thing that you're immune to. It is not a thing that that you can like logic your way out of. I mean, as you said, Nippy, about like these people are dancing circles around you, and to not think that like you're not already getting bombarded with it, between social media and the things that are happening with like the FCC and the conglomerates. Basically just like people think that they can put these kind of experiences in little boxes in their back closet and have it way away from them. And I get it, like that's safe, but like not only are these things out there, but like I just like life's hard and it takes a lot to think for yourself and to hold that up, like especially in like vulnerable phases of your life where like I said, I was, someone said to me like in between families, like I think that like that was where a lot of people came in, was like right after college or like right after a divorce or like empty nesters or like that type of, like there are vulnerable moments in life. I mean, when my dad passed, and it's just like you're extra susceptible then, and just to like really support yourself and have people around you and just know that you're not immune, basically.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. We actually are fighting these things off a majority of the time. We're winning most of the time. It's just one of them gets you at the wrong moment. And
yeah. Some scams are easy to spot. Some are not.
Well, and even if they're easy to spot, it doesn't mean that like I said, like that you can't get those boundaries walked back so incrementally that you think you're still seeing it and you're not.
What's next for you?
I'm still in acting and writing and producing, and I feel like just continuing to make art that matters to me and get it out in the world and help people as much as I can. I mean, that's my whole point of that kind of art, is just increasing empathy.
Great. So no more silks business. That's done.
Oh God. I'm, my husband was just laughing. He's like, that's what I love about you, is like, you have like, what is it? Like the dog with the bone. Like, I just can't let things go. No, actually, finally that I'm now, this is definitely my last kid. I can't wait to get back in aerial silk shape. And because that was like halfway through my time at OneTaste, they pushed me to sell my aerial silks business. And so that was a dream that I got up and running, but never really got to like enjoy and realize. And I still can't let it go. So I wouldn't be surprised if I start a studio again at some point.
Amazing. Well, I hope that you get to live your life the way that you want. And thank you for spending this time with us. It's been really enlightening. And I mean, God, we've been through a lot. So happy to see you thriving.
You're winning now. You're on the right side of it.
Thank you. Yeah. I think the biggest thing is just like getting to live your own life it's a gift after that kind of thing, because, they slowly replace all your goals with theirs. I think people take that for granted.
Yeah, especially because you think that you're living your life and you think you're living your best life. And then that's a real slap in the face when you're like, whoa, that wasn't my life that I wanted. And it was definitely not my best life.
Yeah. So it's a gift to have that freedom.
Yes. Welcome to freedom. Well, this has been a month of OneTaste.
I don't think I need to taste anymore. What do you think?
And we have at least 2 or 3 other applicants who would like to come on the show. And we are trying to, cover all the cults, but I guess we'll pose it to the audience. Would you like to hear more?
It's certainly hard, because the sexual shame is the hardest thing to kind of like, okay, I got to put this out there, right? And to me, that's the hardest part.
Well, we do think Anthia is very brave for doing that. And I know it's hard to talk about.
Yeah, it'll be the floodgates for more people to share their wisdom.
Meanwhile, it looks like Nicole Dodone is posting from prison, or someone else is managing her social media. But either way, this is going to be an ongoing expose here in A Little Bit Culty. We hope that you've enjoyed it, and let us know what you think on the Gram or Patreon or wherever you're listening.
I think she and Keith need to share a cell. What do you think?
Oh, that would be an interesting combination.
The gaslighting chamber.
Amongst other things. I mean, do you think she'd convince him to stroke it?
Get some stroking going on?
I can't even. I need
Keith getting back into the game of stroking? Well, it's been 8 years.
It is an image that I'm happy to be leaving y'all with. On that note, See you next week
on A Little Bit Culty.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean, hanging on to the wave of my love. If I let go of it all, I could leave, but I know I won't.
We hope you're enjoying A Little Bit Culty. If so, please do show us some love. Drop a rating or leave a review. Hit subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/alittlebitculty.
Even better, send this episode to someone who needs it. Maybe they're in a cult. Maybe they're just a little bit susceptible. Or maybe they just love a good story. Spread the word, spread the love. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
A Little Bit Culty is a Trace 120 production.
Executive produced by Sarah Edmondson and Anthony Nippy Ames in collaboration with producer Will Rutherford at Citizens of Sound. Our co-creator is Jess Temple Tardy.
Our production coordinator is Leslie Didenboer.
Writing by Sandra Namoto and social media marketing by Eric Swarzinski and Brooke Keene.
Our theme song, Cultivated, is by the artists John Bryant and Nigel Aslan.
The world is full of tours. But you don't choose a Toyota truck to follow the beaten path. You choose it to find the places in between. The detours, where each adventure pulls you toward the next. And wrong turns turn out right. So why would you ever take a tour when you could take a detour? Toyota Trucks.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 350 plus undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Shopify's point of sale system helps you sell at every stage of your business. Need a fast and secure way to take payments in person? We've got you covered. How about card readers you can rely on anywhere you sell?
Thanks. Have a good one.
Yep, that too. Want one place to manage all your online and in-person sales? That's kind of our thing. Wherever you sell, businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 a month trial at shopify.com/listen. Shopify.com/listen.